given x as x, y, z. I hope the question is visible to you. Let me zoom it a bit more. And the relation is given to you as good as relation. So ये R relation है बेटा. So if you remember in the class of microeconomics, we have gone ahead and we have learned three kind of relations. One relation that we go ahead and do, that is known as XRY, which is known as good as. X is as good as Y. The other relation that we go ahead and do, that is known as XPY. That means X is preferred over Y. Right? So this is X is strictly preferred over Y. X is as good as Y. The third relation that we go ahead and do, that is known as XIY. That means that we are talking about being indifferent. We are talking about being indifferent. In this, we go ahead and we say that I am indifferent between X and Y. So what is this question saying, beta? This question is going ahead and it is saying that we are defining relation in a way where we have XRY relation. Ye dekho. It is as good as relationship that is defined for this set. And for this set, what all is available to you? All these things are available to you. So you are given that X, that means X is as good as itself. That means that this is the property of reflexiveness. Isn't it? What did reflexiveness suggest? Kya bolta tha reflexiveness? Reflexiveness went ahead and said that any commodity should be as good as itself, right? And here I am writing XRX. So reflexivity is being followed. Then the second relation goes ahead and says YRY. That means Y is as good as Y. And ZRZ. That means Z is as good as Z. So ये तीनों ही चीजें, they just go ahead and they just mean that one commodity is as good as itself. That's the first thing. ठीक है बेटा. Now go ahead and try to look into the next relation. So this is saying XZ. That means that this is going ahead and saying that XRZ. So XRZ means that X is at least as good as Z or more than Z, right? So this can be opened up in two ways. I can say either XPZ, X is strictly preferred over Z, or we have X and Z being indifferent to each other. Then it goes ahead and says ZRX. It says ZRX. So if I have ZRX, it goes ahead and it means that Z is as good as X. So zara khud se socho beta. I am saying X is as good as Z. Z is as good as X. So if I just open this up, this will give me either Z is more than, will be Z. God. This will be Z. So either Z is more than X or Z is as good as X. So if I combine these two relations together, ये बोल रहा है कि utility from X is more than, this is saying utility from X is more than or equal to utility from Z. और ये बोल रहा है utility from Z is more than or equal to utility from X. So if I go ahead and I combine these two things together, can't I go ahead and say that X and Z should have exactly the same level of utility? Right? So if I go ahead and I combine these two things together, XRZ and ZRX, this just implies XIZ. X and Y should be indifferent to each other. Only then these two things can be simultaneously satisfied. So from here, I have got an understanding that I must be indifferent between X and Z. I must be indifferent between X and Z. Okay, now just look similarly into this relation, beta. This says Y, R, Z. Why am I using R everywhere? Because it has told me to use this relationship. So this has told me Y, R, Z. And the next one goes ahead and tells me Z, R, Y. Z, R, Y. So this is telling me utility of Y is greater than equal to utility from Z. And this is telling me utility of Z is greater than equal to utility of Y. So how can the two things be satisfied together? कैसे दोनों एक साथ satisfy होंगी? The two things can be satisfied together only when I go ahead and I tell you that Y and Z provide you with the same level of utility. So from this, I can go ahead and I can tell you that Z and Y are indifferent to each other. So from whatever is given to me, beta, जो भी अभी तक दिया हुआ है, what all is given to me, let's write this down. So I have been given number 1, X is as good as itself. Number 2, Y is as good as itself. Number 3, Z is as good as itself. Number 4, when I club them, I am indifferent between X and Z. And number 5, it tells me I am indifferent between Z and Y. All these things are given to me. Now let's look into what the question is saying. The question wants to help me understand whether I can check completeness and transitivity or not. Question पूछ रहा है कि can you test completeness and transitivity or not? So try to understand this thing, beta. If I am indifferent between X and Z and Y, I should be indifferent between X and Y. But is this relation provided to you within the set? No, this relation is missing from the set. So if this relation is missing from the set, would you be able to say that this is transitive? No, I cannot talk about transitivity because nowhere I am able to compare X with Y. There is no way in which I will be able to go ahead and compare X with Y. So therefore, this relation is missing and hence transitivity is missing. At the same time, the relation is complete if I know every possible relation. But does this tell me the relation between X and Y? No, it does not tell me the relation between X and Y. Right? Do I know whether X is preferred over Y or Y is preferred over X, or I am indifferent between X and Y? Do I know the relation between X and Y? I don't. So if I don't know the relation between X and Y, this also goes ahead and tells me that the completeness is not being followed because the relationships are not completely defined. Some of the relationships are in fact missing. So we can go ahead and say that since the relations are not completely defined, it is not complete. And since although I have X indifferent to Z, Z indifferent to Y, but X indifferent to Y is missing, so I cannot comment on transitivity also. So therefore, I will go ahead and say that this relation is neither complete nor transitive according to the set provided to me. Whatever set has been provided to me, I cannot go ahead and say that this relation is complete and transitive. That's the answer to this question. This is sample paper question number 1. Okay, let's look into the next question, beta. So this is the next question of sample paper, and this says that assume that you are given a utility function x1 square plus x2 square. Now try to understand that this utility function that you have, this is in fact a concave preference utility function. So your utility function that you have, this is x1 square plus x2 square. And this has already told me that price of both the goods are same. So this goes ahead and it means that price of good 1 and price of good 2 are assumed to be the same. So you can take them as some p, but they are the same. Now we know that whenever we talk about concave preferences, our indifference curve looks something like this, right? And when I have a budget line where prices are equal to each other, so I have a budget line like this, right? So my equilibrium can either be at this point where I will consume only good Y, or at this point where I will be consuming only good X. I cannot go ahead and have my equilibrium at the tangency condition because then I will be on a lower indifference curve. So suppose I just draw an IC tangent to the budget line, right? So that will happen at point E. But I can go to higher ICs now. I can go on higher ICs within my budget. So if I can go to higher indifference curve within my budget, there is no reason why I will stop at the point of tangency. And therefore, for such indifference curves, whenever you have concave preferences, your equilibrium is always a corner solution. So if the two goods are equal priced, right? The price of the two good is exactly the same. So I will have two kind of solutions, beta. Solution number one, I will consume all of good X. That means X star will be M by PX and Y star will be 0. Solution number two, I will consume all of good Y. That means X star will be 0 and Y star will be M by PY. So either I will be at, either I will be on the point which is intersecting the x-axis or the point which is intersecting the y-axis. These are the two equilibriums that I will be having. So based on that, what should be the answer to this question? Just give me a minute. Okay. So the correct answer to this question will be D. Consumer is indifferent between consuming only good 1 or consuming only good 2. And I can give you a further proof to this. Achha. Just imagine that I start with my first bundle where I consume X is equal to M by PX and X2 will be 0. But PX and price of good 1 and price of good 2 is equal. So I suppose I just write P1 here. Price of good 1, price of good 2 are equal. So what will be my utility, beta? M by P1 whole square plus 0 square. So M square by P1 square. Now just take case 2, beta. If I consume 0 units of good 1 and good 2 will be M by P2. So what will I get? I will get U is equal to 0 plus M by P2 square, which will be M square by P2 square. But prices are equal only to P. So this is M square by P square. This is also M square by P square. So whether I consume bundle X completely or I consume bundle Y completely, the utility that I am getting will turn out to be the same, which will be M by P whole square. I will get the same utility. Okay. Come to question number 3. It says that the demand function for rows is given by this. The demand function for rows is given by 100 minus P and the supply function is given by 10 plus 2P. Before you read this question, I would like to go ahead and I would like to find out the equilibrium price. Then we will go to the question. So how can we find the equilibrium price, beta? The equilibrium price can be found out wherever the quantity demanded is equal to quantity supplied. So 100 minus P is equal to 10 plus 2P. So you will get 100 minus 10 is equal to 3P. 30 is equal to 3P. P is equal to, 90 is equal to 3P. P is equal to 30. This step is not required. इसकी जरूरत नहीं है, but I am just doing it for my purpose for the sake of completing the question. ठीक है? So basically, if I just go ahead and I just plot these two, so we know that this is going to be 100 and 100 here, 100 here, 100 here, quantity, price. And this is going to start from 10 and it is going to be upward sloping. This is 10. So we have understood initially that my equilibrium price is coming out as 30. And if my equilibrium price is 30, so what will be my equilibrium quantity? It is going to be 70. Now read the question. What is the question saying? The government levies a sales tax on roses, after which volume of sales drop to 60. So we are levying a sales tax. Now try to understand, beta. अगर क्वेश्चन में नहीं दिया हुआ है, if the question does not mention that on whom the tax is applied, you can apply the tax either on consumer or producer. Both are fine. किसी पे भी आप apply कर सकते हो, does not matter. You will get the same answer. But just remember that if you levy the tax on consumer, अगर आप tax consumer पे लगाते हो, then your new price will be actually P plus T. The price faced by consumer will become P plus T. And if you go ahead and you levy the tax on producer, so after tax, he will receive a lower price. So the net price will become P minus T. So if you are using the consumer side to solve the question, make sure that you replace P with P plus T. And if you are using the producer side to solve the question, then make sure you replace P with P minus T. That's the only difference that you will be having. Okay. Now let me just go back. So my quantity demanded, I am going to rely on the consumer, will become 100 minus. Now the new price faced by the consumer will be P plus T, and producer will still face the price P, right? So how can we find out the equilibrium in this case? So if I were to go ahead and find the equilibrium, what will happen? Let me create some space. So 10 minus P plus T, quantity demanded, 100 minus P plus T, quantity demanded, will become equal to quantity supplied, which will be 10 plus 2P. So I will get 100 minus P minus T is equal to 10 plus 2P. So I will get 90 minus T is equal to 3P. Right? 90 minus T is equal to 3P. So this means that I will get my T is equal to 90 minus 3P. ये मेरे पास एक relation आ गया. Now what it is saying? It is saying that after you go ahead and you put this tax, जो भी है, जो भी tax हमने लगाया, after you put this tax, what is going to happen? The volume will drop to 60. So the new quantity demanded, it should be equal to 60. So I will just say that the new quantity demanded will come down to 60 because now I am putting a tax on them, right? So 100 minus P plus T, the new quantity demanded, it should be equal to 60. So 100 minus P minus T is equal to 60. And I have got the equation for T from here. So I can just plug it here. So 100 minus P minus 90 minus 3P is equal to 60. So I will get 100 minus P minus 90 plus 3P is equal to 60. So I will get 2P is equal to 50 and P will be 25. P will be 25. So if I were to go ahead and show this diagrammatically to you, beta, how does this look diagrammatically? So what has happened is, because the tax is on consumer, the demand curve has shifted backward. After the demand curve shifts backward, the new equilibrium price in the economy is 25. This is what is received by the producer. Right? This is what is received by the producer, which is 25. The new equilibrium quantity is 60. Right? Now, I have to ask myself, what is the tax? So for tax, the formula is 90 minus 3P. So it is going to be 90 minus 3. What is the price, beta? 25. So minus this. So this will be 90 minus 75. That means 15. So if the tax is 15, what is this wedge? The wedge will be of 15. So this gap, let me just zoom this. This gap will be of 15 and here I will see 40. So this is the price paid by consumer. Am I clear? So the price paid by consumer is 40. The price received by producer is 25. The tax is 15. Suppose they would have extended this question and they would have asked you, how much tax the producer will bear and how much tax the consumer will bear. So you can go ahead and you can talk about that also. So notice that earlier the price was 30, right? Now consumer is paying 40 instead of 30 and producer is receiving 25 instead of 30. So producer is receiving 5 less. Consumer is paying 10 more to cover this gap of 15. So out of the entire tax of 15, consumer is bearing a tax of 10 and producer is bearing a tax of 5. So this is the tax borne by consumer and this is the tax borne by producer. So consumer is bearing twice the tax as compared to producer, and that would be the answer to this question. Okay, but question was just asking the amount of tax. So that is going to be 15. Okay, I think I have not written the options, but that will be 15. But I come to the next question. These are the kind of questions which we have done multiple times in class in the first few lectures of advanced micro. So you can go ahead and redo these questions from there also. Let me look into these questions. So देखो, the utility function given to you is min of 2x1 plus x2, comma x1 plus 2x2. This is the utility function given to you. Okay. How will we go ahead solving such kind of questions? We will go ahead and we will keep utility constant at some level. So let's say I hold my utility constant at 10. So I will get 2x1 plus x2 is equal to 10 and x1 plus 2x2 is equal to 10. Now I will go ahead and I will try to plot these two utility functions, right? So when I will be plotting this first one, what will I go ahead and get? I will put x1 here and I will put x2 here. So either my x2 will be 10 or my x1 will be 5. This will be my first utility function. And then I will be going ahead with the second utility function. So either my x1 will be 10 or my x2 will be 5 and this will be this. Now I need to check where the two utility functions intersect each other. So to find the intersection of the utility functions, I will say 2x1 plus x2 is equal to x1 plus 2x2 and this will go ahead and give me x1 is equal to x2. So it means that the two utility functions intersect at x1 equal to x2. Clearly, you need to understand, and we know this fact that in this zone, we have x1 more than x2. And in this zone, we have x1 less than x2. So we have gone ahead and taken the two zones of x1 greater than x2 and x1 less than x2 also. Clear? Now, let me try to go ahead and think about the same utility function and let us ask ourselves what happens if 2x1 plus x2 is less than x1 plus 2x2. So beta, if 2x1 plus x2 will be less than x1 plus 2x2, तो इन दोनों में से minimum क्या निकल के आएगा? This will be the minimum. So what will come out? What will come out will be 2x1 plus x2. And when will this be less than this? This will be less than this when x1 will be less than x2. Right? So when x1 is less than x2, my utility function will be 2x1 plus x2. And this is the utility function 2x1 plus x2. And this is the utility function x1 plus 2x2. So when I have proved that when x1 is less than x2, the utility function that I am going to follow, that is going to be this one. Right? That is going to be this one. Now, on similar lines, let us go ahead and let us consider what happens if x1 plus 2x2 is less than 2x1 plus x2. If this is less. So, if this is less, what will come out of my utility function? x1 plus 2x2. I will get this out of my utility function. Right? And when will this happen? So this will happen when 2x2 minus x2 will be less than 2x1 minus x1. That means when x2 will be less than x1. So in this zone, when x1 is greater than x2, which utility function am I going ahead with? x1 plus 2x2, which means that I am going ahead with this utility function. So finally, I have gone ahead and got my indifference curve. That my indifference curve actually goes ahead and it looks something like this. These are my indifference curve, right? Try to understand the slope of this part of the indifference curve, beta. So this part is 2x1 plus x2 is equal to utility. So if I were to go ahead and find the slope, I will get 2 dx1 plus dx2 is equal to du. But around a utility function, utility is constant. So du will be 0. So I will get 2 dx1 plus dx2 equal to 0. So I will get 2 dx1 is equal to minus dx2. So dx2 by dx1 will be minus 2. So in this part, my my slope of the indifference curve will be 2. Similarly, here the slope will be half. So we have also got the slope as 2 and 0.5, right? Of course, with the negative sign. Now, let us continue. Now, let us try to go ahead and think about the budget line. So what is going to be budget line given to me in this case? The budget line is that price of good 1 is 20, so 20x1. Price of good 2 is 30, so 30x2 is equal to income. So the slope of my budget line, P1 by P2 is going to be 2 by 3, right? Which is going to be 0.67. So the slope of my budget line is lying between 2 and 0.5. It is going to be steeper than this line, but flatter than this line. So imagine something like this. This can be the slope of my budget line, right? So I can go ahead and say that this is my budget line. This is my budget line. Now, given this budget line, where is the highest indifference curve that you are actually getting? You are getting the highest indifference curve at this point only, right? All other indifference curve would be lower than this indifference curve. See? Right? Isn't it? So the highest indifference curve actually takes place at this kink, where you just touch this budget line. And what is the property of this kink? The property of this kink is that x1 and x2 are equal to each other. So since x1 and x2 are equal to each other, I can go back to my budget line and I can say 20x1 plus 30x1 will be equal to 100. Since x1 and x2 are equal to each other, instead of x2, I have just plugged in x1. So I will get 50x1 is equal to 100. And this will mean that my x1 will be 100 by 50. It will be 2. So I will be going ahead and consuming 2 units of good 1, right? And that would be the answer to this question. These kind of questions can only be done with practice. So the first 3 lectures that I go ahead and I do with you, those 3 lectures have to be revised well. The advanced microeconomics lecture. These are the kind of questions that we have done multiple times in those classes, and you need to go ahead and revisit those classes, right, beta? Okay. Let's go to the next question now. So read out this question. Beta, this was actually a past year DSC question, and they have asked this in Ashoka exam. This itself proves that the level is not going to be very easy, right? As all of you have given your SNU paper, and you know that even SNU level was not easy. It was difficult as compared to CUET, much difficult as compared to CUET. So remember that other universities have not dropped the level. They will still be asking difficult questions. Right, beta? So try to read this out. It says, consider a firm using 2 inputs. It is known that greater use of any input leads to greater output. But for any combination of inputs, the firm employs input in the combination x, ax. Right? So the input combination used by the firm is x, ax. But this implies that because it says, because it is saying that it has to use the 2 inputs together. That means I have to use the main function. And kitna y use kar rahi hu main? How much y am I using? Y is equal to ax, right? The amount of y, look into the other input. Y value is given to me as ax. So I need to look for such a production function which gives me the same analysis that y should be equal to ax. Now look into the first production function. This gives me min x to the power alpha comma y. So this actually means y is equal to x to the power alpha. This is not what I require. Look into the second production function, min ax comma y. This gives me y is equal to ax, exactly what I required. So this is the correct answer. Look into the third one. This gives me min x comma ay. So this means x is equal to ay. I don't need this. This means that y will be x by a, not required. And look into the fourth production function, which gives me min of x comma y to the power alpha, right? So this gives me x is equal to y to the power alpha. Again, incorrect, right? So I wanted that production function, which gives me y is equal to ax. And therefore, the correct answer to this question will be B.